So I haven't actually seen the whole video from Matthew and Teresa. So at the risk of boring you, we're going to play it again and let you guys all take your seats as soon as you can, and then we'll get started. All right, so hit it.
G'day, all souls, friends. Oh, and hello there. It's a member of our crew.
We have so many.
We have lots of people here because we are making a TV show.
All Souls trilogy.
That's right.
If it's good, the first season, we don't know. We'd love to get to the third season, fourth season, fifth season.
Spread the word, guys. Spread it.
Who are you again?
I am Matthew Claremont, the lovely Matthew Claremont.
That makes me Diana Bishop.
Doctor.
Dr. Diana Bishop, exactly. Full title.
Full title. He's Matthew Good, actually.
Yes.
I'm Teresa Palmer.
And we're getting on really well.
We are.
And today we are in Cardiff, which is doubling a little bit for Oxford, and we're having a hell of a time, and it's really exciting.
And we're not there.
No, but Deborah is
Yes.
the genius who wrote this, and she really is an amazing woman. And
We want to say hi,
yeah.
give you guys a shout out, say thanks for all the support and the
I'm
love.
sorry that we can't be there because we love a free drink, and they would be free drinks for us. I don't know if we're just not charging too much.
That's right. Guys, we love you. Say hi to Deborah from us, and mwah.
They had a lot of fun doing that, I can tell you. They're also really eager to for me to tell you how much your support and your well wishes have meant to them. Pretty amazing thing to walk into this much excitement surrounding a role that you're doing, and you guys gave them such a huge warm welcome, and it meant so much to them. So thank you on behalf of all the cast and crew. They are really excited to be part of this family that we've made, the All Souls family, and to be continued. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the afternoon. But anyway, good, I got to see it, so that's good. All right. So it is my great pleasure to serve as the MC and introducer for our panel on the world of All Souls, your complete guide to A Discovery of Witches, Shadow of Night, and the Book of Life, which is coming to you in the US, the UK, and Canada in May 2018. May 8th is the last date I've been given. May wiggle around a little bit. They wanted it in time for Mother's Day. So all of you out there who are looking for something to put on your Mother's Day shopping list, now you've got it, and you can have that covered. So what we're going to do today is we have some images to show you from the book. I'm going to introduce you to everybody who took part in the project, and we're going to have plenty of time to answer any questions that you guys might have. So first of all, I just want to kind of go down the line and introduce you to everybody. This is Claire Baldwin. Claire Baldwin was my editor at Headline, the UK publisher, and has been with this series and with me before any of you ever heard of these books, back in the very dawn of time, in 2009, I think it was, when Headline took a chance, and took a chance on a middle-aged college professor's first novel. And since that time, Claire is now a freelance editor, and so she is sort of the key person, the central person in our team, drawing everything together that the rest of us have provided for this book. Second up here is Colleen Madden. Some of you might know her as at the Red Plaid. Is that it? At Red Plaid?
I'm the new Red Plaid.
She's the new Red Plaid. I can never remember her handles. So Colleen, you might know from her presence on social media. She is I call her my illuminator because I like to give her that early modern title. She's probably in modern terms, what we would say is she is our illustrator, and she has done the most amazing original line artwork for this book, and you're going to get a chance to see some of that in just a minute. Next up on the table is Jill Hough. Many of you have known Jill through email contact. When you're trying to get a hold of me, find me, ask me a question, get a signed book for a charity project, this is Jill. This is the fabulous Jill who answers your emails. She is the executive director of the operation that allows all of these weird pieces of my life to fit together into a more or less seamless whole, depending on the day. And in other news, she also has a PhD in American history from the University of California at Davis. We were graduate students together. So Jill knows where all the bodies are buried in terms of American history. And last but certainly not least is Lisa Halttunen at the end of the table. Lisa you were a history major, and that's an undergraduate. History major at Brown University, went on to get a library science degree from Columbia, and she is my developmental editor. And what that means is that when I do rough drafts of my work, Lisa is the person who points out when I have changed someone's hair or eye color, when my whiches and that's don't line up, when I have made absolutely no sense in a sentence whatsoever. And she keeps this giant database of all of the historical and other bits of information. So she is literally the official librarian of the All Souls trilogy. And as you know, from having done this, it is absolutely crucial to be able to look things up every now and again in this complicated world. And in November 2015, you guys had started asking for a guide to the series. And it was at that moment that I thought, well, there's no way, I will never write another book if I start doing a guide to the trilogy I just wrote. And I said, well, wait a minute, what if I put together a team, a crack team to do this and to carry this off? So in the fall of 2015, I emailed each of these women and said, okay, I have this idea. How would you like to be part of the companion team? So the first thing I'm going to do is ask them what they thought when they got this email. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa first. Lisa, what did you think when I emailed you out of the blue and said, you want to come along on Mr. Toad's wild ride?
I was absolutely delighted. I smiled for a week. We had discussed previous to that the idea of, I think, my writing the companion alone or Jill writing the companion alone. And I was very daunted at the idea of all the permissions required for photographs and pictures and all that. Yeah. But when the idea came back as I get assignments from this lady, and she does all the heavy lifting, it was perfect.
Yeah, because they do all have jobs in addition to me asking them to do this. Okay, how about you, Jill? What did you think when I asked you this question?
Okay, well, I felt my response was exactly my response to everything you ask, which is, wow, that sounds really exciting and fun, and this is terrifying. How are we going to ever do this?
Good. Yeah.
So I was thinking about this the other day, and I thought, it's just like the last line of Discovery of Witches. All of us together picked up our feet and stepped into the unknown.
Exactly. All right, Madam Illuminator, what did you think?
Well, for me, ours was like an atypical kind of union because I was just a fangirl, and then you know, spookily contacted me on Tumblr, and you're like, hey, I'm like, yeah, okay, you're Steve from the basement, whoever you are.
I'm an internet stalker.
Yeah, and then, like, you kept pursuing me, so I'm like, okay, well, that sounds really great. You know, you're super busy, I'm super busy, so, you know, ready to go, just jump and I'll go with you. And I loved it. It's no labor of love.
All right, Claire, how about you?
I think, well, I sort of squealed with excitement when I was so happy. I'd just been working on pulling together the real-time reading ebook, and I loved pulling together all the fantastic historical background.
So for those of you who have downloaded the free real-time reading companion, that was Claire's baby. She did that for you.
Seeing the Facebook posts, and I just loved seeing all of those and following it. And so, yeah, it was just a dream project.
Good. All right. So Claire, why don't you talk a little bit about how the book is organized and how you guys sort of approached getting all of the work done for this thing?
Yeah, so it was January 2016. We had a wonderfully sort of creative meeting where we threw a... Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Is that better? Sorry. So we had a wonderful meeting in January 2016 where we threw lots of ideas around and came out with a very clear outline for the book. And so we sort of, we had that clear outline to work from. So the book is made up of 12 sections, and it covers all the different aspects of the All Souls world. Sorry. So it's the creatures, the characters, the locations, and then obviously the magic and the science and the alchemy, and then all the arts, so the jewelry and the fashion and the lifestyle. So there's lots of cookery and wine tasting, and the amazing literature and the mythology in the book. And there's also an organization section, which is the congregation and all the medieval orders that are featured. I mean, it's just, the scope of the world is just huge, so there's a lot to pack into the book. So basically, we approached it that we pulled together all the material that we had for the All Souls world, and we had notes from Deb and outlines on the characters and the creatures, and that, for me, was one of my favorite bits, sort of reading those notes and finding out things that I didn't know before about the characters. And then we would sort of talk in more detail for each section about how we wanted to approach it. And then I would write up instructions and give each of us our writing tasks, and sort of how many thousand words it all needed to be. And then we'd bring it together, and I would edit everything, and we would rework it to smooth it all out. And yeah, it was...
So about how many pages has it ended up being?
So it's 600 pages. It's all fully illustrated. And there's lots of wonderful extra material. So there are outtakes that have never been seen before. The beginning of each section starts with a character piece from one of the key characters in the trilogy, which Deb has written.
So my assignment was Claire would say things like, can you write a letter between Philippe and Baldwin? I was like, sure. So those were my great assignments, you know. Or could you, like, imagine that Phoebe is taking an inventory of Claremont House and all of the things in it? Could you, like, do those inventory entries? I'm like, gotcha. So yeah, so Claire.
That was very fun thinking.
Yeah, that was really. I loved getting my assignment, to say so, because I got to create new stuff, so that was fun.
Yeah. And then for the illustration, so once we'd got sort of far enough along in the writing, Colleen could then jump in and start illustrating all the text. And I would do sort of briefs for each section, and we would go backwards and forwards about the different elements that we could use. And I mean, we really wanted a sort of strong feeling of discovery and romance, and so using visual clues throughout the text, and we created lots of new symbols. Yeah, it's been great.
So Jill, I'm going to ask each of you to talk about this. So what do you think this companion is alike or different from others out on the market? Because part of what you guys did in January was you filled this hotel room with companion books, like to all of these other television and novel series. And you guys all went through them and talked about. I'm going to ask each of them just talk a little bit about how they see what they did as maybe distinctive or indeed similar or complementary to what's out there already.
Okay, I love this question. I think it's similar in that a lot of the companions, which I didn't own any really beforehand, and so now we own all of them. It's similar in that it talks about the world building and sort of the entire world. My favorite thing that we decided to do was not put an index in. So we wanted the experience of reading the World of All Souls to be a process of discovery for everyone. So there's little notes at the ends of some that say, oh, see such and such. So then you go there, and there's little, it's more Easter eggs, really. Things are hidden, and so I love the way that you'll be able to sort of work your way through different lines depending on, you don't have to read it front to back. You can just sort of go through it and discover things. And that's, I think, my favorite thing about this is that we hit upon this idea of reading it will be sort of, a process of like magic and, oh, this is how Deb's mind works, for better or worse.
Colleen, when you were thinking about how to illustrate it, how were you seeing what you did as being sort of similar to or distinct from what's companions?
Well, I did some research, and what was out there, the thing that struck me the most is that the illustrations were sort of like peppered in here and there, and there's a lot of like kind of clip arty, woodcutty stuff. And then there were these fully illustrated mamas that were done by like 6 or 7 illustrators. So the first thing is I'm just the one illustrator for this big Whomper book, which is amazing, but it's been like a really great task, especially because Claire has just directed me down to a really fine point, and like you even brought it to all the crazy stuff. And it's full of discovery. Each illustration, I built in stuff for you to keep on looking. Like if you know me on social media, I'm constantly throwing in these wild details, and if you're paying attention, that's what this book is all about. So like look in every little nook and cranny, like check out a lemon and be like, oh. But so that was fabulous, and I have never seen that in any other companions, not a single one. And I've been looking.
Claire, how about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a danger in some of the companions with background information. It can become a bit sort of dry and misty. So we really wanted to make sure with this, you had the sense of discovery and romance that you get from the trilogy. So basically all the historical information is framed within the experience of the characters, and it really brings it to life. So for the science section, for instance, it looks at sort of key scientific discoveries over the last 1,500 years, but it's the evolution of Matthew Claremont's mind. So I think it really brings it all to life.
Yeah, so that was another one of my assignments. I had to pick in every key moment in his life, what would Matthew have been reading scientifically? And how did that shape his scientific journey? It was like doing my PhD exams all over again. Shelley's laughing. But seriously, it was like, oh my God, what would he have been reading in 500? What would he have been reading in 900? And that's how we then approached, to kind of go back, the sort of discovery that Bill and Colleen have talked about. What it means is that you can sit down and read through this whole genesis of Matthew's mind by reading through the science section, as opposed to looking alphabetically up genetics or medicine or whatever it may be. Lisa, how about you? Where did you see the project sort of cleaving or departing from tradition?
I think it's so much richer than other companion books because the trilogy itself is so much richer. The literature, the history, the characters, it all ties in together. The science, you could feel your mind expanding when you make all these connections between these different subjects. So it was really a revelation to write.
Excellent. Do you want to see some pictures? You want to get a sneak peek? All right. So first of all, the beautiful covers, which the UK and the US publishing companies did to tie in to your existing book covers. So if you are in a world that is served by headline Hachette, you will get the cover on the left, which is the red and black and tied to the series. And of course, if you have a book that's produced by Viking Penguin, you will get the one that ties in very nicely to your existing set over here. Am I driving? Am I pointing? Oh, there. There he is, John D. himself. So this is one of Colleen's amazing line drawings, and gives you a kind of a sense of what the art is like in the work. Picture of Queen Elizabeth's astrologer. You can't have the world of all souls without having a cup of tea. There she is herself. So tell us, Colleen.
Okay, there's a tiny bit of discovery in her face if you know the story in Shadow of Night. Do you see it?
The look, the expression? Yeah. Oh.
Well,
her teeth.
Yeah, because
her bad teeth.
Yeah, the sugared violets. Yeah, so she's sporting a little bit of a toothache there, maybe an abscess. But a pretty one. It's not icky.
There are Gallo Glass's runes. So this is what Colleen was meaning about having these sort of thematic elements that go through the whole book and tie it together, and you can follow them almost like a trail of breadcrumbs through the book. The things that you think, oh gosh, this is a Gallowglass thing, this is an Elizabeth thing, this is a Diana thing. Is that your bear?
Javert, yeah.
So there's your bear.
He's the one I did with the toothbrush, if you were following me on social media. Like, part of the portraits, for me, the discovery was coming up with how I was going to do it. And the toothbrush was like a great idea to get this kind of spackly old look.
Painting by toothbrush. This is going to become the new craft thing now. There's Mop. I know, doesn't it just, don't you just want to pet him? Team Miriam. I have a thing for cowboy boots, so. Yeah, Matthew and Jack's cello. Good job.
Yay!
Is that Welch or is that Hilliard?
That's Hilliard.
So that's the actual, that is, I guess, the self-portrait of the illuminator as in the 16th century guys as Nicholas Hilliard. So this is the man who painted those miniatures of Matthew and Diana.
If I had a beard, yeah.
A beard and a mustache.
The eyes are him and me
You
together.
totally look like that. And that's Rabbi Lowe.
That's one of my favorites.
Okay, do you want to talk about this a little bit, you two? Claire and
So basically, the beginning of every section opens with an amazing double-page spread illustration, and there are lots of elements and sort of signs to discover in those double pages. So when you go into the section, they kind of they pop out.
yeah, so it'll be again, and you can just look at them. The more I looked at it, I kept sending these emails saying, "Wait a minute, is that?" And they say, "Yes, that's what that is." I particularly like the branch going through the skull. I kept thinking of, Shakespeare when I saw that.
And they're all very different for each section. So.
And this is a mock-up of the page layouts, the way that the pages look. So you can see how the elements are sort of interspersed and along with the text, so that instead of it just being huge running blocks of text like an encyclopedia,
Right.
It's got a little bit more liveliness and
that's a tame page
And
compared to
yes.
some of the other integrated
Sometimes the illustrations go right through diagonally like a double helix, right through the center of the two pages. So it's just every time you turn a page, it really is. It's like being on an adventure. So it's enormous fun to read. And we just are finishing up with it now to get it into production. So we're doing things like copy edits, which I don't know if any of you saw my post about how when I do copy edits, I feel like Rose in Titanic, clinging to a plank of wood, iceberg-filled sea, hoping for rescue, because it's so grueling to have to go through 600 pages and make sure it's all consistent and every detail is right, because obviously the last thing we want you to do is to send you down the wrong rabbit hole in search of an Easter egg. So there's all kinds of new stuff in the book as well. You get full names of vampires, you get vampire birth dates, you get astrological signs for people. We did all the astrology for everybody. That was fun. So we really think that you're gonna like it. And I just am gonna sort of turn to I'm going to ask these guys a last question, then I'm going to come around and get your questions about the process. But for all of you, was there anything that really was your favorite thing to do? Was there something that really surprised you? Was something that you found really challenging? Colleen, you want to start us off on that?
I'll take the challenging.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was time management, because it's a huge endeavor. There's over 628 counting plus illustrations in the book, so it's a fully illustrated piece, and it involves a great deal amount of time, and I'm like a fairly distracted kind of girl, so it was really hard to say to my family, okay, people just, I gotta handle yourselves, and just make sure you're wearing underwear, no pizza every night, and then I would just lock myself away for days on end and draw, and then get up and run, and get up and then eat, and so for me it was this learning process of how to handle my process, which isn't really a process. I just kind of went at it day by day in a completely different way each time. So
Yeah.
that part was challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. Claire, how about you?
Yes, I mean, in a similar way, it was the logistics of the whole project. So making sure that we all kept on track, and there were lots of people involved. So it's thinking around all the aspects and making sure it all came together smoothly. But we've got there. We did.
Lisa, how about you? Good experiences, challenging experience, surprising experience.
Some surprising things. People out here may know this, but I was writing something about Gallowglass and the difference between, I had to write this down, Ulfethner and berserkers. When Diana first meets him, she says, "This berserker is your nephew?" And he says, "I'm sorry, I was an Ulfethner. We wear the wolf hides, not the bear hides." So this big Norseman is correcting her on her historical knowledge. That kind of Easter egg was a lot of fun.
Miss Jill.
Well, my favorite things were the things that I learned. And I don't know. I know there's a lot of super fans in the room, so I would read things and think, oh, I wonder if they know this. For instance, I remember watching YouTube videos to learn the Queen's Gambit for chess, and trying to figure out, okay, how can I write this in such a way that it'll be interesting, because I read a lot of, did a deep dive into chess and the online chess community, and then sort of tried to come out and think, okay, how can I write this in such a way that they'll all enjoy it and be able to picture it. And then things like, we did this really, can I talk about this, the Sotheby's sort of vibe of the decorative arts. So we had this really fun idea that for the decorative arts, we would write up pieces like as if it were a Sotheby's catalog. And so we got to describe like her wedding dress, and I was a little torn. So that was fun to do, to sort of bring in elements of things that had happened. I also learned about the 16th century clothing, how it was put together with ties and picadilles, so I loved that. So I loved the experience of learning about Deb's world, and was amazed at the depth and the complexity, and I think that's probably why we all love this series, because her world building is so, it fits together like such a tight puzzle piece.
Yeah, I think what surprised me was how surprised I was all the time, because even the big concepts are based on real things, but then just even the small details, and you find all these other connections, and it was wonderful to research.
That's why it's so fun to write it. That's absolutely why it's so fun to write it. All right, so we've got about 20 minutes for questions. So does anybody have any questions, things that they're wondering about the book, about how? Yeah, you want me to come over and see you? Oh, okay. I'm supposed to stay here. So, as you can see, I'm a college professor, so I immediately want to wander off into the audience and ask questions. Sorry. Okay, yes, ma'am. Tell us your name first.
My name's Melanie. I'm so happy to be here. Just curious, as you went through this process, I imagine there were so many ideas swirling around that this book could literally have been like 5,000 pages, right? So the question to the panel is, what were you most disappointed about having to leave out of it?
Good question, Melanie. Lisa, do you know what you're disappointed?
There was just so much, especially writing the science sections, which were great fun, and I got really lost in the story of Alexander Fleming and the discovery of penicillin. There's an illustration, this is a spoiler, of a moldy cantaloupe in the book, which pleases me no end, because I got so absorbed in this story, and I had to really work to keep my word count down. Claire kept us to a certain amount of words, and then it was over, so we had to be concise.
Yeah. But we kept the moldy cantaloupe picture.
We drew that.
Any other things that hit the cutting room floor? I think for me, one of the things we wanted this thing called gatefolds. Do you want to explain what those were?
Yeah.
We had this idea. And then they were like, you want to do what? So here, Claire and Colleen can talk you through this.
Yeah, so I mean, the decorative arts section is going to be a real showstopper. It looks beautiful. So we've done 4 of the rooms from the trilogy, which includes Mary Sidney's lab and the forest room, and Colleen's doing beautiful illustrations of those. So they're double-page spreads, but we had this idea, so gatefold pages, which are double pages, but then they open out into 4 pages.
Yeah.
But that is very expensive production-wise.
So it would have sort of looked like this, and then you would have opened the doors to the room, and the room would be inside, and the publishers were like, no. So we ended up instead with you turn the page and the room's inside, which is a pretty close
will look very
approximation.
beautiful.
But you should have seen us like making little mock-ups in this hotel room and be like, wouldn't it be great? So that was my like, oh my God, hit the cutting room floor. Yeah, it was the fabulous gatefold concept of January 2016.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, for the characters section, so all the real historical characters, we've put lots of background information about them, but there's just so much that you want to include, but it would suddenly be sort of 3 pages long. I know, I need to cut this down.
One of the things that they were doing was they were listing every organization every character belonged to. And finally, I just was like, that's it. We're not doing this anymore. Because it was like this list, like Matthew's organizations, like All Souls College, Oriel College, the Knights of Lazarus, the Templars, and it just kept going and going and going. And it was like this long. It was like reading somebody's, like resume. And I was like, we gotta draw a line somewhere. Jill, how about you?
Well, no, I was just going to say, we're so thankful that you write such big, long books, because we really, we had already sort of softened up the publisher. And, and so they're like, well, it's a Deb Harkness book. It's going to be long. So they let us, they let us go.
They knew what was coming. Sure.
Yeah, it is a chunkster. It totally is a chunkster, just like the other ones. Anything else?
Costumes. You write such beautiful costumes that you clearly researched and had in your mind, and then you put in my mind, and I wish we could have had about like 10 or 20 more pages that just devoted us to costumes. Even the contemporary, like, Discovery of Witches stuff, it would have been really fun to get into, like, scarves and, Baldwin stuff.
Yeah, because some of you may have seen Colleen's illustrations on Tumblr. She was on Tumblr for a while as Fetch Goody Allsup on Tumblr. Mm-hmm. So those images that you saw of, like, Isabeau in her turtleneck with her little Chanel skirt and her boots, that's the kind of thing that Colleen loved doing when she was fan arting and when I started stalking her on Tumblr. And so I can see why she would want to do those costume pages. Were pretty groovy. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, come on up. Because I'm going to, you know what? I'm getting down with a microphone. I know I'm breaking all the rules here. All right. And then I'll go from there.
It's a little more comfortable back in the chair. Okay. So I wanted to ask what creature from the series you identify with, and did that affect how your work came out?
Okay, tell us your name.
Oh, my name is Corinne.
Corinne. Go, Corinne. Yeah.
That's a good question. You go.
Well, actually, I mean, I'd probably say I identify with a witch the most. But funnily enough, when we came to the writing of it, we did split it by creature. So I did vampires for the creatures section, and Lisa did witches, and Jill did demons, and we're obviously working from Deb's notes. And then that carried on all the way through, so for the characters, we split them by creature as well. So, yeah.
I do not identify as a demon.
Well, Deb told me years ago I'm a vampire because if I found a $100 bill in the middle of the street, I wouldn't spend it on a good dinner. I would put it in the bank. So it's because I'm cheap.
Oh my goodness. Or prudent with your investments.
I like to think of it that way.
Colleen, demon, witch, vampire.
Well, we know.
Well, no, like a hybrid of like a demon and a witch, but not a witch, like a weaver, because I can't really follow directions like normal witches do. I got to kind of make my own thing. So, demon.
Yes.
Demon. I'm a demon.
So Jill, if you're not, you're not a demon, what are you?
I'm a human. I really do think so.
I think you are too.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right.
What are you, Deb?
Yeah, what are you?
Oh, I'm totally a demon.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm totally a demon. Yeah. What's interesting is that a lot of times who you think you are, your friends do not think you are. And this is, even on the set, has led to all kinds of problems because we have a demon, a witch, and a vampire chair, and people will say, go sit in the vampire chair. And someone will say, I am not a vampire, I am a witch. And we're like, no, you're not. You're totally a vampire. So, yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of a slip there. Great question, Corinne. Thank you so much. Other questions? We've still got about 5-10 minutes. You want to come on up? You were asking good questions at the fan panel. I recognize you from the feed. So introduce yourself and then your question.
Hi, my name's Janelle, and I'm a native New Orleanian, and I was giving tours for free in the Garden District, and people were asking, where is Marcus's house? And I applied to the one that I think is Marcus's house, and I'm just curious as to whether or not Marcus's house is in the book.
Okay. Is Marcus's house in the book? I don't think it is. I think maybe Marcus has told you where he lives, but not me, which is, we have to have a conversation. Oh. We'll talk. Yeah, see, sometimes they don't tell me everything, guys. So I'm always happy to have a little bit of help from my friends on these sorts of things. The other day, I was in London a couple weeks ago, and I passed a house, and I was literally hanging out the window and taking a picture of this house and thinking, somebody has to live there. That is an absolutely fabulous house. I kind of know who lives there now, but okay. Well, maybe you and I need to go to the Garden District, Janelle, and wander around and find Marcus's house. And all right, it's a date. It's a future date. Yeah, so we haven't, there are some things that I don't know the answer to yet. They kind of get revealed over the course of writing. So we can't promise you that every question you've ever had will get answered in this book. And it is a little bit like it's sort of like we're looking at things in retrospect as opposed to where the stories are going now into the future. And that's not because we're already thinking to ourselves, well, that's because we can sell them another book. That's not what it's about. It's literally that I don't know. When I do know, like, all of Gallowglass's names, they're in there. So you will have a couple of those kind of fun things. Miss Jean, at the mention of Gallowglass, Jean Siska stood up. Yes, ma'am.
You know what team I play for.
Who was the most surprising character for each of us? So for me, it was Joanna Kelly.
Oh.
Because of her...
Edward Kelly's wife.
Edward Kelly's wife.
So why was Edward Kelly's wife surprising to you, other than the fact that the poor woman really had a hard life?
I know. It was because of what Edward Kelly put her through. And because the fact that she had been married to a Weston, which is Timothy's last name.
So you went down a little genealogical rabbit hole.
I loved that. I was like, oh my goodness. That was my favorite moment. Was like, I think I texted Deb. I was like, wait a minute. And she just sent me back a smiley face or something.
Lisa, how about you? Any characters stood out to you?
Well, oddly enough, I had a good time researching Rudolph because he was so weird, and his cabinet of curiosities and his pornography collection. This is deeper than I want to go into this character. Yes.
Yeah, Rudolph really. Yes. Even at the distance of several hundred centuries, when you finish reading about Rudolph, you do kind of come away and go, How about you, Claire?
I think, well, just talking about all the small surprises, when I was researching Matthew Royden, that he'd actually make his abode in Blackfriars and live with a shoemaker. I was like, oh, that's real as well. And, yeah.
I don't know if it was really the Hollies, but I knew he lived with a shoemaker, so I went through the parish registers until I found a shoemaker who was living at that time, and then that's the name that I used. So, yeah, so that was where we got to the, to that, yeah. And I did the same sort of thing with Susanna Norman, the midwife, who is really the midwife. Who, Sophie has the last name that she has. Was not because I sat there and was like, okay, I have a demon. What will her name be? I was like, okay, well, she's going to be descended from this midwife that I know. And the names of her 2 sons are the names in the parish register of Susanna Norman's children. So again, I like genealogy. So I like to build that in whenever possible. You can look them up on Ancestry.com, Susanna Norman. She's in there. So, other questions? Yes, come on up.
I'm Mandy, and I have a gift for picking out books that are impossible to describe to other people. And so I want to know what all y'all's elevator pitch is when you're trying to convince people they need to read the books.
Yeah.
So I start with Harry Potter for adults, but I mean, there's got to be better ways to I mean, because it's a world in the same way that Harry Potter is a world, so.
So how would you guys describe, now having been through all 600 pages of research, writing, whatever, how would you describe this series of books? Harry Potter, I mean, listen, Harry Potter for grown-ups works for me, but I'm not criticizing that by any stretch of the imagination, but anybody else have any thoughts?
But I mean, it's very much, it's not like anything. It's very much its own thing. The world of All Souls is so all-encompassing. So it's not just the rich history, it's all the science and the genetics, but wine tasting and kind of the everyday, it's cookery. So, yeah.
And romance.
And romance.
Yeah, romance. So it's magic, discovery, and romance.
And sexy walnuts. I mean, it's not really like Harry Potter because it's a lot more like for moms, not for Hermione's mom. It's for moms. Yeah, so.
No, I don't have anything.
I always like to say that it's, what I wanted to do, and it's interesting because as we're kind of embarked on the television, one of the things that our executive producer, Jane Tranter, always says when she now tries to describe it to people is that she says that the trilogy is a love letter to our world.
That's nice. Lovely.
Isn't that lovely?
That's nice.
And I think that really does sort of capture, so much fantasy is wonderful, but it's about a different place. And what I really wanted was to give you the sense that you were like doing the reading equivalent of eating an entire box of calorie-free Godiva chocolate, in that you kind of could just get lost in this world of relationships and history and the past and the present and the romance and all the feels and the everything. And so I think, I think our executive producer might really have nailed it when she said that what the books are is a love letter to our world and to everything in it. Because that's certainly, our world is a magical place if we just kind of open our eyes and let that in. And I think that can be a challenge, for sure, but there are those unbelievable moments, like when I walked into this ballroom and I saw the chandeliers and the brick, and I just went, because it really was like there was magic in our world as well. All right, we've got time for one more question if anybody would like to ask another one. If not, I'll free you for lunch. Okay, come on up. Thank you. You guys, I will take all of you in my classroom. I usually have to pull teeth to get people to ask questions. Okay, so tell us your name.
I'm Michelle.
Michelle.
I was wondering, wow, that's weird. You can hear yourself. When you talk about the creatures in this book, are you going to kind of go into creatures in other parts of the world? What, witchcraft in Africa and South America would look like versus, kind of the more, I mean, Anglo-Saxon, I guess?
That's a very good question. I wrote a section on witchcraft and the history of witchcraft, and I realized I was taking a very Anglo-Saxon view of it. And I realized, of course, people do believe in evil witchcraft now. So, yeah, we looked at other cultures and different understandings of witchcraft and whether it's evil or not. It's really an interesting question.
Yeah, so the creature section, we talk about, well, the characteristics of each creature in books, and also their sort of lore, but then the history behind the creatures in the books, but also the myth that it's based on. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
we definitely explore it with like a lot of iconography. I was just thinking about some of the special things that I don't want to tell you about yet, but there's like lots of like symbolic iconography, and you'll probably recognize what it is right away without saying it. So, but it all wraps into the creature section for witches. There's a lot about witches.
Yeah. So when I was reading the witchcraft section, what I loved was the way that as it emerged was the way that it talked about sort of how witches are in this book, how they are in terms of a world culture, how they're looked at in a sort of Judeo-Christian tradition, which actually, if you're a pagan, like the idea that somehow you would worship the devil is extremely problematic, because as a pagan, you don't actually have a concept of God and the devil. So that, and all the ways. And so what was great is it really did kind of wrap all of that up and give a kind of a wider view. So one of the things I think that happens in the trilogy is, we start with a white Anglo-Saxon pagan, WASP in a different sense, not Protestant but pagan, and a French vampire, and that as they go through their journey, they take the journey that we all need to take, which is about empathy and embracing difference and being a part of a world that is much bigger than any one person's experience in it. And that's something that, we kind of continue to push in the trilogy, and it's lovely to see it in the companion as well. So thanks for your question, Michelle. Good, excellent, thank you. All right. It is precisely and exactly 11:50, which means it is time for us, yes, to break for, okay, but housekeeping announcements. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to actually go eat a sandwich and come back, but I'm around, don't worry. I'll start, I'm going to come out and say hi to you guys, so I'm not going anywhere. I'll be back soon.
Thank you for the wonderful panel. Two quick announcements. So as you exit the ballroom, on the left there is a table with a gigantic piece of paper. If you write a note for the cast and crew of A Discovery Witches, we will mail it to them.
And as previously mentioned, a little bit of housekeeping. We will be breaking for roughly 1 hour, so we'll anticipate that you'll be back in your seats at 1 o'clock so we can begin again. Once you exit that door for lunch, you'll not be able to come back in until we are ready to reconvene. So we are going to ask everybody to gather their things, walk out, and then you can reassume your seats as soon as we open up the door, so that way we can get together again. So that's kind of important to know. Also, one of you, an unfortunate one of you, may be missing your hotel key. One of our volunteers discovered this and has returned it to the front desk. So please check your belongings, so that way you don't get up to your room. You're grossly disappointed when you pat yourself down and can't find your room key. And also too, as you were told when you received your badge both last night and this morning, ideally anyway, there are special lunches that have been prepared for you by the NOPSI hotel staff that has gone out of their way to make us feel welcome and honored to be here. So please take advantage of the dining facilities here in the hotel. You will not be disappointed. The food is exceptional. Let's eat.